Welcome to another episode of the Theodore Bullock podcast. In this episode, I want to explain why I believe that David Benatar's version of antinatalism is futile. David Benatar, in his book, Better Never to Have Been, asserts that all lives are bad, that no matter who you are, he suggests that you not procreate because all lives are bad. So in a way, he's kind of equalizing all lives by saying that no life is worth bringing into existence or causing to exist. I'd rather say causing to exist rather than bringing into existence. Although I understand what he means. He doesn't mean like bringing into existence from somewhere else. But I do think that actually some people think that way. Actually, I know a lot of people do think that way. That there's this idea that there was a black void before we were born. But I'll get into the whole black void stuff later. So he basically equalizes everyone by saying that, even if you're rich, it's unethical to cause someone to exist. Even if you're very healthy and happy and you're a good person, he still says it's immoral or unethical to cause someone to exist, to bring a new life into existence. So in this way, he would suggest, he is suggesting that if we all followed his, if we all went along with his suggestion and his belief that it's more like it, so he would have it that no humans procreate anymore, because he sees it as unethical for anyone to have kids. So his idea is to avoid suffering, to not cause any more suffering. At least it seems for the human race. He doesn't seem to extend this into the animal kingdom. From the interviews and what I've read that he has written. But I'm going to point out why it doesn't make sense for him to extend that, his antinatalism, to the animal kingdom and wherever else life may be, which some people are calling, I believe it's called ephilism or something like that. It's the word life backwards and an ism put on the end of that. There was a man on YouTube that created this term. I believe his name is Emendon, or that's his YouTube channel. Anyways, so yes, to be consistent, I'm going to explain why Benatar should be an ethicist to be consistent, but I'll also explain why even that is futile. So, if your goal is to eradicate suffering, then no one can have kids anymore. So this is his idea. Like he suggests that he prescribes that no one has kids anymore. But the thing is, if I didn't exist, this is what I'm asserting. If I were never born, then because others were born at my time of birth, would I be in a black void, resting in peace, or appreciating my lack of existence in any way? No, I wouldn't exist. And not existing is not a deprivation from experience. It's just you don't exist. I'm not being deprived of anything because I don't exist. So there still is consciousness occurring, even though I didn't exist. And that consciousness is from a naturalistic point of view, is being done by other brains. So if I weren't born, because others were born at my time of birth, then instead of my experience right now, it would simply be one of those other experiences, sort of filling the void that my lack of experience would have left, rather than it being my experience right now of sitting here experiencing and recording this audio. It would be one of the other experiences that does exist or is occurring right now. So here's a thought experiment to try to illustrate what I'm talking about. So imagine that you're the only conscious being in the entire universe. There's just you. That's the only conscious experience there is, anywhere. Even if there's other dimensions and whatever else, even if there's other supernatural places or anything else. In this thought experiment, there is only your experience. You exist as a material organism in the universe. You could say you're here on Earth, and so that's the only experience. This is important for this thought experiment too. So I can hone in on explaining, conveying what I need to convey. So you exist, there's only your experience. And then eventually, one day you die. You cease to exist. You don't go anywhere. There's no black void after you die. You just cease to exist. You no longer exist. But then, let's say maybe a year later, or a million years later, or even a trillion years later, it doesn't matter how long it takes or how soon after you die, that eventually, somewhere in the universe, it could be a completely different planet, it could be somewhere else on Earth, it could be, in perhaps another dimension, or someone coming to exist, just anywhere that exists. Eventually, this new conscious being or organism comes to exist, and now that is the only conscious experience there is. So your death wouldn't have been followed by an experience of a black void. The only experience that is occurring after you cease to exist is the experience of that new conscious organism. So that is the only experience that could come after your death. It's not that you went into, this isn't your soul going into that new organism. In this situation, in this thought experiment, there are no souls. This is a completely naturalistic thought experiment. It's a simple matter of, there was this experience, and then it stopped happening, and then now there's this experience. Now it's the experience that is occurring right now, or I should say it exists right now. So you could look at it as if you imagine a blank piece of paper and you draw a dot on that piece of paper to represent your experience, that dot, and then you erase that dot, and then you come and you draw a new dot, a completely new dot, anywhere else on that piece of paper. And so there is experience after the other one, and that other dot that you erased isn't in a black void or anything. The only experience that came after the first one is this second one. So you don't go into that new body. It's, like I said, it's a simple matter of which experience is occurring versus one that has stopped occurring. So in this way, this is what's called generic subjective continuity. It kind of has a similar outcome as reincarnation, but it is not reincarnation. Like I said, there is no soul, so it's not you going into a new thing. So just imagine if you were never born, you wouldn't exist. You wouldn't be in black void or anything. The only experiences that would be occurring if you were never born would be the conscious experiences that are occurring via the the brains that were born or do exist around the world. And there are brains all over the world right now doing consciousness. Every single person you know, there's a brain doing consciousness. Everyone's having their own experience. Every animal on Earth, So there's all this experience. So if you cease to exist, there's going to still be experience after you die. It completely naturalistic, in a completely literal way. There will be life after death. Nothing supernatural here. It's just after I die, I know there's going to be life after my death here on Earth. So my non-existence will not be some kind of way of preventing experience of suffering from coming after my death. So in a way, because of Benatar's stance that all lives are not worth living, that none of them are worth causing to exist, this kind of like defeats his view that, he says you can't have this thing because this thing is unethical. But I'm saying that, well, you can't get rid of that thing because this thing is going to keep happening. He's basically saying we need to get rid of conscious experience altogether. And I'm saying, no, conscious experience, if you weren't born, there would still be conscious experience. If you cease to exist right now, there will still be conscious experience. It'll just be being done by other brains. And before you were born, let's say 100 years ago, before you were born, there was experience. And this is no longer the thought experiment, by the way. You probably figured that out. It was over a couple minutes ago. But if 100 years ago, you look back, well, hey, there was experience going on. You don't remember that experience because you're a physical brain. You don't have access to other people's memories and experiences, just as I don't have access to your experiences and whatnot. Each experience is a sort of one at a time type of deal, one at a time fashion. You only experience one individual experience, and it's just the same as everybody else. So, just like when you were born, even though billions of other things were born at the same time as your birth, you only experience your existence. And the same after death, even though billions of things will be born after you die, only one of those experiences, conscious experiences or lives, can come after this one. And it's not like literally, like I said, it's not you going into a new body. It's just a matter of there being experience occurring in the universe after you die. So that's all you are. That's all this experience that's being created by your brain is just an experience occurring in the universe being done by a brain. And all of this is still true even if souls exist. If the soul can be annihilated, like many Christians and others believe that if souls do exist, that according to the Bible, God annihilates some souls. Then if that soul ceases to exist, then generic subjective continuity is still true. At any point in time, the crux of generic subjective continuity is that ceasing to exist. And so if at any point in time a consciousness completely, if that personal continuity of consciousness ends and it cannot continue anymore, if it completely, utterly ends, then generic subjective continuity is what happens. It's just a simple matter of there being consciousness versus there not being consciousness. And so this makes Benatar's goal futile. So if all humans stopped existing, we stop procreating as he prescribes, then the human race eventually is completely gone. Of course, unless we figure out how to be immortal, which, even if we extend our lives for billions of years, eventually we're going to end. But anyways, if if every single human on Earth, if we all went extinct, then there's still the animals. You know, and generic subjective continuity would mean that, somebody's walking by with their dog. I don't know why they're barking so much. The dog is clearly suffering, in distress. So if every human died, then there would still be consciousness that comes out of it, and it would be the consciousness of animals, animal consciousness. And I don't know about you, but wild animals, I'm pretty sure, have it harder than us humans, civilized humans, in the Western world and other places where humans have better lives than wild animals. Where in the wild, there's many videos online of animals ripping each other to shreds while they're still alive. And of course, there's good things about being a wild animal, but I'm sure. But I don't think any of us would want to be a zebra living in Africa, hunted down by lions, fearing for your life all the time. And then one day, that lion comes and digs its claws into your rear end and tears your flesh off. And, I would say the idea of causing the human race to go extinct is actually a terrible idea, because that would be what we'd have to look forward to. And, you would, like I said, you wouldn't go into that zebra. It wouldn't be you going inside the zebra, but it would just be that zebra brain is doing consciousness. So then we have to ask, well, okay, what if we got rid of all life in the universe? Well, this is tricky. Even after all life in the universe ended, there wouldn't be an experience of no experience, as Tom Clark put it, the man that coined the term generic subjective continuity. There wouldn't be a black void, a peaceful black void, or resting in peace, peaceful oblivion, or black screen, or any of that, nothingness. By the way, Tom Clark's essay is called Death, Nothingness, and Subjectivity, where he coined the term. So you should definitely read that. But yeah, even then, it wouldn't be followed by an endless non-experience or emptiness or whatever you want to call it. There's all these different words that basically are used to say the same thing, to mean the same thing. And what it is this idea of a silent black void where you have a prolonged, sustained, endless lack of experience. I don't understand how anyone could come to this conclusion, because whenever you go unconscious, you don't experience being unconscious. You're not there like, oh, this is great. It's so nice to get a break from being conscious. That doesn't make any sense. You only experience. Only experience is experience. So if you go unconscious, and then 3 hours later, you become conscious again, you didn't experience that 3 hour period of time when you were unconscious. From your point of view, it was skipped over. From the point of view of consciousness, that was just skipped over. As I say, unconsciousness or a lack of consciousness is a proverbial time machine. There's, it just takes you from one moment you're here, and the next moment you're in the future, and you see that things have changed. You see the clock on the wall says a different time. You see that the people that were in one spot have moved around or whatnot. The sun has it moved across the sky, or should I say that Earth rotated? So anyways, so there would be, after all lives ended, there wouldn't be an experience of no experience, or all that, whatever you want to call it. Instead, now this is my claim, eventually there will come there will eventually come a time where consciousness will once again emerge, or say occur, or whatever. Some people are pedantic and they will get upset if I use the word "it will emerge" or "it will exist" again. They're like, consciousness doesn't exist, it's not a physical thing. I'm like, yeah, I'm using it colloquially. I always have trouble saying that word, but I'm using it, kind of like metaphorically. It exists in the same way that the color red exists in your head. All of that. So it eventually consciousness would one day once again come to exist. And I say this because forever never ends. There's just not going to be nothing in forever. Change is the only constant in the universe. So eventually, people imagine like, oh no, that's going to be the end. It's like, okay, so then let's go further along. But like, no, it's still going to be the end. Okay, so then let's go further along. And we could keep playing this game until infinitely, until eventually something happens. Because eventually, whenever infinity enters the equation, it just never ends. And so eventually something is going to happen. Almost by definition, something eventually has to happen. Because it's just the same way that something eventually happened before, whatever situation it was, where most likely that's what's going to happen again, or something like it. It may take forever, but eventually consciousness is going to occur again. And like I said, all the time in between wouldn't have been experienced. It from the perspective of consciousness, they're going to feel as if, just the same way that you felt whenever you're after you were born, how many years after you were born you became conscious. You don't recall not existing. You don't say, oh, remember 100 years ago when I didn't exist? All you can remember is existing. And so eventually, that same feeling, no matter what creature or organism or whatever it might be, that conscious experience will feel as if it won't recall its own lack of existence. It can't, it doesn't have a memory of that. So, yeah, that's my claim, is that eventually consciousness will come to be again. But anyways, my point is generic subjective continuity makes Benatar's version of antinatalism futile, I don't believe he includes animals, but does he include other sentient organisms out in the universe? And who knows what they're capable of? There may be aliens out in the universe somewhere that have figured out a way to stop the universe to stop the heat death of the universe. We don't know what aliens might be capable of. There might be super civilizations that have gathered with thousands of other galaxies that are just populated with these hyper-intelligent super aliens, and they have, for all we know, figured out a way to stop the heat death of the universe from happening. We don't. So that's a possibility. Might be highly unlikely, but there's we don't. We're making assumptions, but I really do believe that eventually, even if heat death does occur, that eventually consciousness will come about somewhere. But for now, that in this moment here, within the next couple million years or billion years, we know there's most likely consciousness is going to continue to occur here on Earth. And so that, for now, I actually believe forever, is going to make Benatar's antinatalism futile. So I'm not a natalist, but I did come up with some situations in some of my YouTube videos where it might be actually good to cause some things, some new consciousness to exist. I came up with the idea of, I call it a thought experiment, where I call it the hellish arena. Just imagine there's a planet or a situation where all life is contained in this arena. And that's where all life is. They're only in this arena. But then, and in that arena, it is like hell. It is like nothing, every single organism in there is having a hellish experience. It's all bad. But for some reason, they keep procreating. They keep continuing life. And so, my argument is, eventually, abiogenesis will cause new life to exist elsewhere in the universe. And then, if that new life outside of the hellish arena discovers the hellish arena, they should, for ethical reasons, I would argue that they should either release those people or organisms, whatever they are, that's inside the hellish arena. They're the ones that can free them from that situation. And they could only free them from that situation if they were outside of the arena. For whatever reason, the people on the inside can't get out. And but that one individual organism wouldn't be able to carry out this task alone, so they'd have to procreate. And also, it'd be better for there to be more conscious experience outside of the arena than inside the arena. So the more, because let's say those outside experiences are having a much more preferable, it's much more preferable conscious experiences than what's inside the arena. So to create more of that would be more ethical, considering generic subjective continuity and everything else I've said in this podcast so far. It'd be more ethical to cause more to exist outside of the arena. So in that situation, it's all situational. In that situation, it would be a good thing to cause births. Whereas if it were, there's nothing but, life never came to exist outside of the arena and it's just the arena, then yes, of course it's unethical to bring new consciousnesses to exist inside that arena. So natalism and antinatalism, for me, to have a kid or to not, is situational. It depends on the situation and the circumstances. So, and that, I believe that's the best we can do. And so the best we can do is to make life better for as many organisms as we can, human and non-human. Because imagine you died right now, and the conscious experience that came after this one, after you died, is that of let's say, a baby cattle that's being held in a tiny little cage in order to restrict his movement so his meat stays at the consistency, I believe, so it stays tender, so that when he's slaughtered, his meat tastes better or something, for the humans that's going to consume him. So imagine that conscious experience comes after your death, so that wouldn't be good. So this gives us a reason to treat the farm animals well, to give them a good life, the best we can, and then this comes into the whole vegan argument. So should we abolish all farm animals? No more causing farm animals to exist. Well, then the animals will only come to exist in the wild. And like I said earlier, the wild lives are not luxurious. They're not comfortable. If it were up to me, if I had to choose between being born a chicken on in someone's backyard where they have like a chicken coop and the free-range chickens, and it's actually like, a preferable life compared to being an animal in the wild, I choose that. So the whole thing, generic subjective continuity actually it sucks. It means that inevitably, at some point in time, death is going to be followed by a bad experience, a very bad experience eventually. Because look at all the human lives that are just terrible. You know? So I agree with Benatar on that. Like in Buddhism, life is suffering. You know. Anyways, I feel like I've pretty much covered everything. Yeah, there's a lot. I do agree with Benatar. I agree with his reasons and stuff, but his solution is illogical. It's futile. Whenever you really think about it, especially in a naturalistic worldview. But like I said, this still applies even if consciousness is done by souls or however it may be done.